Hello, I'm gonna just go over some optimization stuff for just games in general, but primarily Overwatch because that's the one people have asked me to do. So the first thing is just understanding how lag happens. So you've got the mouse, which you move, and then that goes down the wire into the driver, and then the driver interprets that signal and puts it into the game. It's just within your operating system. The motion there is understood, and then that is sent out to your internet driver, which is your network driver, and then that is sent to your router via Ethernet cable or Wi-Fi, or whatever, and that's sent out to the game server. So when people talk about lag, there's lots of different types of lag, which can occur at any point here. Really, is a source of lag. But the one that I'm probably mainly going to be going over is ones on the left side of the screen, which is sort of input lag and just increase FPS in general performance. Because the stuff on the right side you can't really change that much. Obviously, wired with an Ethernet cable is better than Wi-Fi because you get less dropouts. But your router, you could buy a better router or buy a better internet connection or move house even, but you can't really change that. So I'm mainly going to be looking at input lag, especially because in Overwatch, the way that the game is set up is, I think it's called shooter priority. So if you're playing Widow with 1000 ms, you can still click their head and it'll still kill them. You don't have to lead your target or anything. So so first thing is in-game settings. Full screen is the way to go. Resolution, make sure it's set to one that's good. 144 is what I use because that's my monitor, and then a star because that's what the game recommends, but make sure that's not set to 60. I don't think it really matters if you change the FPS limit here, but I would just make sure it's set to the... Just make sure settings are basic. I won't go over all of them, but make sure it's the same as what you've got here. VSync off, triple buffering is off definitely. Reduced buffering can be on or off. If you're struggling to pump out decent FPS, then having that off might mean you'll get more FPS. But if you do have good FPS, then leaving it on will mean you get less input lag. In terms of the FPS limit, a lot of people say a bunch of different stuff, but I find personally that having the highest FPS that my PC can consistently get, the most important thing is that you have consistent FPS so that your input lag doesn't change. But once you know what you can do consistently, you can pump up as high as you can. You can test that by going into a custom game and just putting a load like Roadhog bots or something with permanent ultimate and zero damage taken and stuff like that. If in game you have your FPS counter, if 1 dot is fine. If you have 3 dots, then that means that I can't remember. I think it's your GPU encoding is unable to keep up. So that happens sometimes when you tab out and then tab back in again. So if it looks like this, you tab out and then you tab in and you get 3 dots. If you just flick your reduced buffering on and then off and then back on again, so off and then enter and then on and then enter, it should go away and give you less input lag and more FPS. Render scale 100 is what I use. If you're struggling then you can go a bit lower. I'll turn everything off just because I prefer FPS is much more important. In Overwatch settings, so you can find this by right clicking on your shortcut and then going to properties. Disable full screen optimizations. I run as admin, I'm not sure if that helps. And then you click high DPI settings and you can tick this box. In the NVIDIA control panel, you just match these settings really. At least this is what I use. I think the more important ones are the maximum pre-rendered frames is 1, which means that so if you set that to 4, your game will produce 4 frames ahead. So the game engine will produce what's actually happening. It will then produce 4 frames, and then your monitor will display. So there's a 4-frame lag. But if you set that to 1, then that's the minimum you can have, and that's good. I have 1 monitor right now. I have multiple other times, but right now I've got 1, so I've put this to single display performance mode. Probably would be better, but if you do want to use more monitors, then I would change that. Power management mode, prefer maximum performance, definitely the one you go for. Preferred refresh rate, highest available, highest quality, highest performance there. And if you turn, I've got VSync turned off here, and then I can choose in games that I can turn it on or off, but I leave it off there. Trouble buffering off, thread optimization auto, it should be on for Overwatch, but I think auto means that is the case, and this also won. In here, make sure that this is 144. See, a lot of people, when they get a better monitor, they don't actually change this, so they don't use the right refresh rate their monitor is. In adjust desktop size and position, I have it on full screen with scaling on GPU. I don't actually know if this does anything, but this is what people that play CSGO like, so I just adopted this. I've tried a bunch of stuff, this seems to work best for me. If you go to your display adapter settings, then you click the advanced properties here, and then go to monitor. You need to turn that to 144 as well. You need to do that and in your game, all three places, to actually get that higher refresh rate on the monitor, otherwise it won't work. I have this on in display. I have this on a slightly different RGB code because someone told me that looked a bit nicer. I don't know if it impacts the game. In speakers, I would turn the spatial sound format off so it doesn't simulate surround sound. And then in Overwatch, I have it set to on, so it has Dolby Atmos simulated in game, but not here. If you have it on in both places, it might lag you out a little bit. Here I would make sure that this is the defaults. I tried some other stuff, but I think that this is good. I would not increase it to higher than this because that might have a bit of extra lag. Power options, so click there, and then here. You want to definitely choose high performance here, and then you click advanced, and you can see the more details here. The wireless app settings, you want maximum performance, USB selective suspend disabled, PCI Express. Did I minimize that? Yeah, I did. PCI state power management, that should be set to disabled, I think. So basic, I can't remember, but you basically want it so that it doesn't go into like sleep mode. Processor power management, you want active cooling, and I think when you do that, it automatically uses these two. But you want this so that you're basically, when your PC goes idle, it doesn't just turn off a bunch of stuff. You want it to always be running, especially if you're this is Windows weird settings. This was in the created update, which had a lot of issues. But there's Game Bar and Game DVR. They're built into Windows that like run in the background and just try and help, but they don't. So make sure to go into both of these and just fully disable them everywhere you can, because they don't really work that well. For the mouse, you want to make sure that you have enhanced pointer precision disabled. The pointer speed doesn't actually matter in Overwatch because it's direct input, but it might for other games. In Task Manager, you want to find Overwatch and set priority. I have this as high right now. You can try other stuff. I find this works best for me. If you have to do this every time you boot the game up, unless you want to go into the registry edit, which I won't tell you here, but you can find online. You can go into the registry edit and set it so that it always starts in high. I would not set it to real time. That would be a disaster. If you want to do additional tests, you can download software from resplendence.com called Latency Monitor, which when you try and run it with the game in the background, it should tell you your driver input lag. So it's the input lag from the drivers, and if the driver has an error and has to restart the processing, it will tell you, and those are called ISRs and DPCs. I think, I'm not entirely sure, but if this will just basically tell you, it does it all for you. If it goes into the red, you get like 1,000 microseconds. So remember, this is microseconds, like milliseconds. Then you've got an issue and you need to sort your drivers out. But this is mainly so that you can find out where the problem is, so you can then look in that way. Then you can also, once you go to drivers, and it will tell you all of the things in milliseconds. So, for example, in mine, you see that the NVIDIA graphics is the highest thing, which you can't really help. That's just the basic NVIDIA graphics card. So that's causing the errors. If you had other things here, they might be showing up. HW Info is a good tool for analyzing your CPU and other stuff on your motherboard, like your memory. This will tell you if you're overheating, if you're thermal throttling, if your clock speeds are correct, your voltages are correct. If you overclock, You can analyze a lot of stuff there. This is just on your memory. It'll tell you all that. You can also download other memory tools. It's just a really good info for just checking out your PC and seeing how it's going. Other stuff is USBs. So there's USB 3.0, 2.0. I think there's USB 3.1 now. But basically, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you plug in your mouse and your keyboard into the different holes in the back and just see which is best. 3.0 should be better. You want USB extenders are completely awful. And that's not even if your mouse is plugged into one. If you've got USB extender plugged in and nothing else is plugged into it, it still lags. It's so hard. So make sure you don't have that. Those also exist on some keyboards, so if you can try and disable that. They sometimes come with two wires. You want to only plug in the one for your keyboard and not the one for the extender. Like I said, try different ports. And I would unplug all unnecessary devices. So if you've got a camera or an external disk drive or anything like that, if you wanted to really go nuts, you could unplug your mic or just everything you can, really, if you wanted to go crazy. I would make sure that, just basic stuff, update your drivers. Some people talk about HPT, which is a sort of defunct old thing in Windows with like an internal clock, and it isn't really used for anything nowadays, but they still have it for some legacy things. But it does, some people say that it interacts with the way that the clock works in Overwatch and makes you lose input lag. You can disable that in Windows, but you can also disable it by going into the BIOS. You could try that, but I wouldn't recommend that, fiddling around with that in the BIOS unless you're absolutely sure what you're doing. Just basic stuff. Close all background programs. This definitely close Chrome, close all like work, PowerPoint, all that sort of stuff. If you've got, I press Control-Shift-Escape to bring up your task manager, and then you can check all of your other programs. You might have some running that you don't know about. Just go through there, have a look at if you absolutely need everything to be running. A lot of PCs come with various bloatware with their when you buy their parts, like the CPU. A lot of them try to help, but they don't really. So I would just close them down, or if not, tell them to not even start up in the first place. If you wanted to go crazy, you could even close things like Discord or Skype when you're playing. I mean, I wouldn't even use Skype to begin with, but you can close Discord in the background if you wanted to go crazy. And then also sometimes you'll find that your PC is lagging, and it's just because your PC is not good enough. So, like I said before, all drivers have an impact on your game. So even though audio doesn't really do much in the game, the game still has to process the audio. So if you buy a really expensive audio driver, there will be less input lag simply because your game is able to process the audio very, very slightly faster. So that's the same with the CPU, the motherboard, the RAM, the network card. Like every part of your PC has an impact on input lag, and upgrading it will make it faster. You could also look into overclocking if you want, overclocking your RAM, overclocking your graphics card, overclocking your CPU. Overwatch is mainly a very CPU intensive game, so it's mainly going to be the CPU that's the bottleneck in terms of just base PC stuff. I think that's it. But there's probably loads of people come up with loads of stuff all the time on the forums. If you really are in a sticky situation, you can always message me and I'm happy to help. But the main point with all of this stuff is that this is what I have found that helps me personally get less input lag, but it might not work for you, and it might even make it worse. So for all of these things, try it with and without, and then if you find that it's better, then keep it. If you find that it's not better, then obviously go back. Also bear in mind that a lot of stuff like this is placebo based, so you may actually find that you think that it's better, but really it hasn't changed anything. That's it.